Hello everyone, welcome to my messy studio. My name is Mark, and I'm an artist and an art professor, and a fountain pen aficionado who uses them for making art. In this video, I'm going to do something I've long wanted to do, compare two very popular pens with flexible nibs, the Pilot Custom 74 Soft Fine, and the Platinum 3776 Soft Fine. Both pens have sterling reputations for affordability and performance, but which pen is better for artists? Which combatant will remain standing in this momentous clash of the titans? Let's get it on. The Pilot Custom 74 is one of Pilot's most popular pens and seems to be on many people's top 10 lists. Part of it is its affordability, being one of the less expensive gold nib options on the market. Part of it is its reputation for reliability and performance. But another part is the large range of nib options available for it, including a soft fine, a flexible nib that allows you to get line variation. This is what initially drew me to this pen, and in the several years that I've owned it, it has rewarded me with absolutely flawless service. But there was another pen in the same price range with a gold soft fine nib that I was very curious about, also with a stellar reputation, one made by the Japanese manufacturer Platinum, the 3776 Soft Fine. I had held off buying it for a long time because it felt like it was redundant, but I had always wondered how it compared with the Custom 74, and all the comparison videos, which were intended for writers or collectors, left me unsatisfied. So finally, curiosity got the best of me, and here at last is the Platinum 3776, bought for no other reason than to see how it fares against its bitter rival, the Pilot Custom 74. Before we talk about how these pens perform, let's compare their bodies. These pens are very similar in dimension, as you can see, to the point where it shouldn't play a part in your purchasing decisions, but let's run some numbers anyway. The Pilot is slightly longer capped, coming in at 14.3 centimeters to the Platinum's 14. Uncapped, the Pilot remains longer at 12.5 centimeters to Platinum's 12. And posted, the length difference is retained, with the Pilot coming in at 16 centimeters to Platinum's 15.4. In terms of girth, however, the Platinum barrel is slightly wider at 1.2 centimeters to the Pilot's 1.1, but having almost identical measurements in the grip section at about 1 centimeter. In terms of weight, both pens are light but not insubstantial, with the Platinum being 24.7 grams to the Pilot's 22.2. In terms of ergonomics, there are a few significant differences. The Pilot has a short, slightly curved and tapered grip section, with smooth, polished threads that don't catch against the fingers. And because the barrel is about the same width as the grip, it allows nimble movement up and down the pen, from closer to the nib for shorter, more precise strokes, to farther back for longer, straighter hatching. Unposted, the length and balance are ideal, with the pen gently resting in the space between the thumb and forefinger, which I recently learned is called the perlicue. This is a pen that really disappears into your hand when you're working with it, which to my mind is just about the highest praise you can give a pen body. The only drawback to this pen, and it's very slight, is that when it's posted, the pen becomes fairly long and back heavy. But since this is a pen that I never post, this is a trifling issue. The grip section on the Platinum is equally short and tapered, but lacks the gentle curve of the Pilot. And while the Pilot's threading is low profile and smooth, the threading on the Platinum is sharper, which your fingers rub against. Furthermore, there's a sharp step up from the grip section to the barrel that catches against the fingers, making moving the fingers up and down the barrel less comfortable. I wouldn't say this is a deal breaker, however, just something to mention in the interest of making a detailed comparison. And to that end, I should note that posting the Platinum is more comfortable, since it's a little bit shorter than the Pilot by half a centimeter. Let's talk about the inner workings of these pens. Both caps unscrew with 2 turns, and I should mention that the Platinum cap features the slip and seal system, an inner cap that is spring-loaded so that it provides a tighter seal over the nib, supposedly preventing it from drying out. This feature seems to work well, but I can't say that the Pilot, which does not have this mechanism, has a tendency to dry out any faster, so it might just be a gimmick. When you unscrew the barrels of these pens, you'll see that they both have metal on plastic threads, which do have the potential to wear out over time, but I imagine if that does occur, it'll be noticeable in decades as opposed to years, particularly because I keep my pens in constant rotation. Despite these pens being similar in price, the nib on the Platinum is actually much larger, being closer in size to the number 15 nibs we see in more expensive Pilot offerings such as the Pilot Custom 823. I suppose that would make the 3776 a better deal, but since nib size usually has very little influence on the performance of a pen, we'll take that out of the equation. Both these pens are cartridge converters, with both companies producing proprietary cartridges. These cartridges are fairly similar to each other, with Pilot cartridges holding 0.9 milliliters of ink and Platinum holding 1 milliliter of ink. The converters for these pens, however, are very different, with a Platinum using a traditional twisting converter that holds a decent 0.61 milliliters of ink, and the Pilot being able to use a number of converters, including the large Con 70, which holds 1.1 milliliters of ink. While I do consider the Con 70 to be a superior converter, it does come with a significant drawback. While the Platinum converter is easily taken apart and fully cleaned, the Con 70 with its push-button mechanism makes it difficult to fully clean. This is something to consider if you enjoy using waterproof inks or are just one of those people that switches inks often. However, though the Platinum converter wins in terms of ease of cleaning, the overall prize for ease of cleaning easily goes to Pilot. In the Pilot, the nib and feed pull right out with minimal pressure, and then the nib pulls right off, allowing you to give everything a thorough flush. However, despite claims online that the Platinum is also friction fit, I was not able to pull out the feed and nib, not with soaking and not with a rubber grip. In cheaper pens, I might apply more force or even resort to using pliers, but here I hesitate to do so. This is a major issue since I often use waterproof inks and switch inks often, and even water-soluble inks can build up over time, requiring thorough cleaning. So far, other than the Pilot's advantage of being easier to clean, at least for me, the two combatants are fairly evenly matched. But now let's take them into deep waters and see how they perform in my patented series of tests. I'm going to be using my usual materials, working on Strathmore Bristol paper, a smooth hard surface that takes pen and ink very well, and Noodler's Lexington Gray, an ink with good wetness and transparency, which allows me to better gauge how wet these pens write. In the consistency test, which checks to see whether a pen skips when putting down lines, both pens perform perfectly, from every angle and at every speed. This speaks to the dedication to quality control at both companies and is the main reason why people adore both of these pens. This for me is really the most important test, and if a pen fails here, it's a complete deal breaker. This is also where my tests differ from the ones made by writers, who might do a test of fast writing, but will never put down strokes at the speed or length used in making art. Now for the test everyone has been waiting for breathlessly, at least I have, the line variation test. The Pilot delivers some nice line variation, starting at a fine and going up to something like a double broad, okay, perhaps a broad and 3/4. This is a healthy range for a pen advertised as soft rather than a flex pen, and in fact, this pen has as much flexibility as the Pilot Falcon, a pen that many people buy for its much lauded flexibility. In reverse writing, this pen doesn't work, but since it already writes so thin unflexed, it's not really necessary. I would rate this pen at about a 3.5 on my 1 through 10 flex scale. As for the Platinum, it also has a nice range of flex, starting at a very fine, extra fine, and going all the way up to broad, or perhaps a little bit over it. Given the fineness of the starting line, the range is very nice. Furthermore, because the nib is very pointy, almost like a crow dip pen, I find the line it produces to be more precise and calligraphic than the Pilot's. This would be a fantastic nib for fine detailed work that requires a sharp, sensitive nib. It also, unlike the Pilot, works great in reverse, putting down an extremely fine, triple extra fine line. So, though I would rate this pen at about a 3, a little short of the Pilot, because it starts with a finer line, the line variation here is just as impressive. In the feedback test, which tests for smoothness, the Pilot is smooth given its fineness and provides just a touch of feedback when working on a smooth surface. I should note that feedback is not something I consider in my pen purchasing decisions, since I enjoy nibs of every kind, from smooth to scratchy. But it does have an effect on the way you draw, acting to speed up or slow down the hand. This is where there's a big difference between the Pilot and the Platinum, with the Platinum having considerably more feedback, and not necessarily only because the Platinum nib is ground finer. While Pilot Gold nibs have a reputation for smoothness, Platinum nibs, almost as if out of the need to differentiate themselves, are known for their feedback. This feedback is quite pleasant and I'm enjoying it, but it does mean that you have to be careful to use it with a paper that can withstand abuse. In the wetness test, we see another difference with a Pilot nib being wetter. The Custom 74 is by no means a wet pen, with several other Pilot offerings, like the Pilot Falcon, being much wetter. This speaks to the fact that the Custom 3776 is bone dry, one of the driest writing pens in my collection. I should say that Noodler's Gray is a wet ink and provides good ink flow in just about every pen I put it in, so the fact that it writes dry here is significant. But these tests, as useful as they are just warm-up rounds before the actual showdown. Now let's subject both pens to the ultimate test by actually drawing with them. I'm staying with the same paper and same ink here and doing two versions of the same subject. The first thing I noted is how wonderfully precise and easy to control the Platinum pen is. Again, in feel, this nib is quite close to some of the Crow dip pen nibs I'm used to, though the flex is certainly less impressive. Dip pens are untipped and have the advantage of being very sharp, which allows you to create very clean lines. Most fountain pens, on the other hand, have rounded tips, which make the pen smoother, but takes away from the crispness and control you have over the lines. The Platinum, therefore, is a nice balance, not as scratchy as an untipped nib, but pointy enough that it can do very sharp and clean work. I was really enjoying the pen when, after a few minutes of drawing, it started to run into problems, with skipping becoming a significant issue. Since skipping can be caused by many things, I took it through the usual checks. First, I looked at it under a loupe to check for misalignment. There was none. Then I gave the pen a good flush and ran a piece of acetate through the tines to eliminate potential blockages. That wasn't it. I checked to see if it was reacting to fingerprints on the paper. That wasn't the case. The pen kept skipping, and the issue became so severe that I considered stopping this test short. And though I did manage to more or less bring the drawing to some state of completion, the process became very unpleasant and the drawing suffered because of it. I'm not sure why the skipping issue didn't come up in the consistency test, but in drawing it rendered the pen almost unusable. And here is the final drawing. The Pilot, however, behaved as expected in the drawing test, putting down lovely and often juicy lines without any issues whatsoever. The line variation is slight, but noticeable, giving me a range of line weights from wispy to bold. Best of all, this pen is easy to control and great for the beginning pen user who wants to experiment with flex. This remains one of my favorite pens for general drawing purposes and one I reach for when I want an absolutely hassle-free drawing experience. That said, the lines on the Pilot are not as sharp and precise as the Platinum, since the tip of the nib is rounded. Here is the final drawing. Given the significant skipping problems of the Platinum 3776, I was about to hand the victory over to Pilot by disqualification when I remembered just how sensitive some pens can be to different kinds of inks, and that sometimes a pen's frustrating issues can be solved with nothing else but a simple switch of ink. With this in mind, I decided to change the ink in the Platinum from Noodler's Lexington Gray to the very well-performing, super well-behaved Pilot Iroshizuku Fuyu Shogun, and do another test. And now the Platinum delivered a flawless performance, putting down line after delicate line without any of the previous skipping problems, though I did have to remember to slow down my strokes. The conclusion here is that this pen is a bit of a diva, requiring the right paper and the right ink to work optimally, unlike the rough and tumble Pilot, which works with every ink and on every paper surface. But the Platinum, once its demands are satisfied, is really a terrific pen and an excellent performer that, like the Pilot Custom 74, is absolutely worth getting. Here is the finished drawing. Now for the moment we've been waiting for. Time for me to judge this contest. But before I do, allow me a few seconds to fit in a brief plug. If you like the way I draw and how I explain things, please consider signing up to my fun, fast-paced, and information-packed online workshops. My newest one, called Drawing the Head in Pen and Ink, will give you everything you need to know to effectively draw a head in this challenging medium, including how to construct a head without the use of a pencil underdrawing, and various tips, tricks, and strategies for rendering convincing facial features. Please visit my website for more information. Okay, back to the scheduled programming. Well, how are we to judge this contest? Well, sorry to disappoint those that were expecting a clear winner, but though these pens were similarly priced and similarly sized and have the same marking of soft fine on their nibs, they're actually very different pens and don't belong in the same ring. The Pilot 74 Soft Fine is a generalist, great for sketching, fast or slow, on any kind of drawing surface, with every kind of ink. It puts down a nice fine line with a touch of line variation, adding lovely boldness and expression to your work. This is a pen you can take with you, an enthusiastic worker that is up for anything. The Platinum 3776 Soft Fine is a specialty pen, used when you want a specific kind of look to your work, very fine, detailed, with just a touch of line variation. Like a Crow dip pen, it's not designed for multi-purpose sketching, to be whipped out when you feel like doodling. Rather, it is the choice when you want to create small, precise, and again, delicate work. So I'm going to award each pen the prize as champions in their respective divisions. I hope you found this comparison useful, and if you did, please subscribe and let me know what other pens I should review. Thanks for watching, stay tuned for more art and fountain pen tutorials and drawing instruction, and see you back in my messy studio very soon. Bye-bye.